Hi, and welcome to a rainy day here at Clockhouse Place in the UK. My name is Joel Harris, and I work in the SAP Business One Demand team. And I'm joined today by Richard Duffy, who's currently sat behind the camera, but will be taking his turn in front. And you joined us today, and what we want to do is we want to talk about, maybe thrash through some ideas around really how do you go about selling SAP Business One Demand? What are some of the key things that we should think about? And what's some of the tips that we can perhaps discuss and share some best practice that we've learned from some of our partners. So I think the way that we see this working is we see this breaking down into a few different areas. I think the first one that we're going to look at is really understanding who it is that we're selling to. So who is our target market for SAP Business One Demand? And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about maybe some of the things that we've seen some of our partners do in terms of really trying to address a target market. Okay, so after we've looked at who it is that we're looking to sell SAP Business One Demand to, we're then going to understand, or try to understand, why it is that they are in the market for an on-demand solution, and why it is that they may look at actually buying SAP Business One Demand. And after we've done that, we're then going to start looking at what it is that they're buying. So, really understanding how we can take SAP Business One Demand and how we can package that up, what it is that we're selling to them. So our third point is really to look at and understand what it is that we are selling. So, I think if we look at the on-premise world, what we're selling becomes, really it's quite simple, and I think we all understand it, which is, we take SAP Business One, we take the services that we have, we take any add-on solutions that we might have, and we deliver that to a customer with and form a solution out of it. I think what we need to look at here is, in the on-demand world, we're not just selling them those pieces, we're also selling them the hosting service as well. Where is SAP Business One actually going to be hosted? So we've got another relationship that we need to consider there. And by looking at all of that, we need to understand what all those components are and work out how we deliver them to the customer so that they are simple from the customer's point of view, because the customer doesn't want to see that complexity. And then the final thing, and I think this is the one that is possibly the biggest challenge, which is how. And, yes, we can take Business One and we can deliver it to a partner, to a customer, and in fact, if we look at it, we can do it in exactly the same way if we chose to. So we can sell a customer a software as a service license where they're paying for Business One on a monthly basis. And then we can deploy and have an implementation for them in exactly the same way as we would in the on-premise world. Now, if we do that, I think we're kind of missing some of the benefits that we have with software as a service, with cloud-based solutions. I think people expect those to be rapidly deployed solutions. So we need to look at how we really package that up. And I think customers are already beginning to tell us that they expect certain things from their solutions when they buy something from the cloud. So it may be that today we can do things in a certain way, but we need to start sort of having one eye on the future, if you like, and really beginning to understand how we can change our deployment model, how we can change the way that we price our components, how we change the delivery of all of the add-ons and the services that we bring, and that you as partners bring really into this whole equation. So these are the things that we want to talk about today. And we want to keep it quite informal. We're going to kind of throw backwards and forwards between us. So,
all right. So my turn to do an introduction. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Richard Duffy, and I'm the SAP Business One Product Evangelist. And what I'm going to do is talk about the first of our topics here when it comes to selling SAP Business One on Demand, and that is who. Who are you going to sell SAP Business One on Demand to? Who is going to buy this solution? Now, there's a whole bunch of different opinions on this topic. And you can say, well, the kinds of people who are most likely to buy an SAP Business One on Demand solution are those kinds of organizations who are looking to be able to deploy a solution very, very quickly. They're the kind of organizations who are looking to deploy a solution at low cost. They don't want to tie up too much of their working capital in their IT infrastructure. And they're two great examples. There's other people that you can think about that might be wanting to buy an SAP Business One on-demand solution. And you might say, okay, well maybe it's the subsidiaries of large enterprises where they want to take a solution to be able to deploy that and roll it out very, very quickly to their subsidiaries. And all of these are great examples of people who might want to buy an SAP Business One On-Demand solution. But fundamentally, I think there's a couple of things which are key to this. And the secret here is to really identify the key characteristics of these people. And the key characteristics of people who are these days, from what we have seen, what the analysts are saying, what the market is saying, the key characteristics of people who want to deploy cloud-based solutions are fundamentally organisations who don't want to invest a huge amount of their working capital in IT. Now, are these people in certain industries? You know what? Funnily enough, there doesn't seem to be a specific industry type that really lends itself to deploying an on-demand solution. I think really what it does come down to is understanding what are the key things that a customer is looking to do. And when you think about that, when you think about the things that they're wanting to do from a strategic perspective, really it's about identifying those customers who want a business solution that's going to meet all of their requirements, that's going to be easy to deploy, that's going to be based on best practices, that is going to be affordable, and it's, you know, again, these are organisations who don't want to spend a huge amount of money up front. So that's the who. You know, do we need to get down to the specific industry level? I mean, at SAP, one of the things we do is we pride ourselves on our level of industry knowledge. But I think in this particular instance, it doesn't necessarily come down to industry. Look at SAP Business by Design as an example. Where have we had a lot of success? We've had a lot of success in the IT space. We've had a lot of success for companies who are in wholesale and distribution, you know, in the IT space. Why? Because these kinds of people tend to be a little bit more savvy about the whole on-demand concept, about the whole concept of running their business solutions in the cloud. But I think fundamentally what it comes down to is being able to have a conversation with a potential customer about what it is that the solution has to offer, and being able to articulate to them that you're offering SAP Business One, which is the same application that has been deployed successfully by more than 35,000 companies around the world today in an on-premise model. And taking that same functionality, taking that same solution, that same capability, and now being able to deploy it in a cloud model, and then having the discussion with them about why the cloud makes sense, and why the cloud makes sense specifically to them. So that's my view, if you like, on the who. Now that, again, might not be at a detailed enough level, but again, one of the things that Joel and I want to do is spend this time talking with you to get some of those thought processes started for you. And of course, both of us are available to have a conversation with you about your strategy. So you should reach out to your SAP Business One channel manager, reach out to Joel and myself. We'd be more than happy to sit down and say, okay, let's look at your specific situation as an SAP Business One On-Demand partner, and let's work out a strategy that makes sense for you. So that's the how. What we're going to do right now is talk a little bit more about the why, and Joel's going to jump back up here and he's going to talk to you about that.
Let's move on, and I think if we're going to address this market, then we need to perhaps have a look at why it is that organisations would look at something that is an on-demand business management solution. And I think, you know, this point's an interesting one, because if you look at the research and if you look at the papers that Aberdeen Group have sort of released on this in terms of one analyst, they've gone back and business management software was really kind of the last bastion in terms of business software that moved towards the cloud. And if you go back to 2007, in the survey that they did with CFOs at the time, there was a very, very small percentage of those organisations that would even consider running a business management application in the cloud. And when they went back and did that in 2010, there was a small change, but not that much. And it really is only in the last 18 months, 2 years, where organisations have actively said, well, do you know what? Yes, I would consider running ERP in the cloud. So I think, you know, when we look at that, you know, that gives us an understanding that, you know, think we have to accept that business management software is something that companies like to kind of hold in close and feel secure about. So I think there's definitely been a shift in the market in terms of organisations feeling that the cloud is maybe more secure. I think there are some other key points that we should probably understand, and we can then use these to really build what our proposition should look like to our customers and to the prospects. And I think the first thing is access, and I think this is one of the things that really appeals to customers. They like the idea of a cloud solution because they get access. So they get access from the devices that they have, from where they are at any given point, and they are just very quickly and very easily and simply able to get hold of their data, to get hold of their information, to process their transactions, to share that where they need to share it. So I think that's one thing that the cloud really, people have that perception. It's like, well, if it's stored there, then it's very easy for me to be in another country, to be in another office, to be able to share that across multiple offices. So I think that's one aspect. The other thing I think that leads people to look at cloud solutions is infrastructure. And hopefully I've spelled that right. But infrastructure is, or lack of. So if you imagine the prospect that you're selling to in an on-premise environment where that question comes up that says, okay, what sort of hardware do I need to run this business management solution on? And you go through all of the discussion on that, and then the customer has to go out and has to buy that, and that can cause a delay of the project in its own right. But there's also a capital investment cost for that customer as well. With the cloud, they don't have to concern themselves with the spec of hardware that the solution is going to run on. And I think that's something that's key for them. From their point of view, they don't need to have specialist knowledge in order to do that. They don't need to work with you to really understand this environment that's going to run on, and then we'll come on to how the effect that has further down the line on those organisations too. So here we're offering them something where that infrastructure just is there, and it's just they're able to use. Then the next point really is to look at the fact that we're minimising their investment. And when we look at a cloud solution, we immediately take an awful lot of the capital upfront cost out of the equation. So now we're giving those users with Business One Ondemand, you have the customer has the ability to pay for each user on a per month basis. And and if when we come on to talk about how that deployment model works, that we can start looking at, okay, what impact does that have on services? What impact does that have on the complementary add-on solutions that they use? So that is something that is again very attractive. Minimising the investment means that Business One Ondemand can be available to more companies perhaps than previously would have been able to access it. Okay, so what else do organisations look for? Well, I think one of the key things, and this is definitely a perception of the cloud, if you think back to your own experiences with the cloud already, let's understand that organisations are looking for a quicker time to value. If we just look at our own personal consumer experience of working with cloud products, typically we expect to be able to sign up for a cloud product and have access to it straight away and start to gain benefit from it as soon as we've learned how to use whatever the application is. And organisations here are no different. They can access software so quickly in the cloud that they can be using it in a productive environment, making their organisations more efficient, gaining value from the use of the software, gaining insight and into all of the data that they have. And then once we open that up, we just start talking about Business One and look at some of those benefits that we know come from Business One already. We've suddenly made that available to them that much quicker. So I think that's something that's key. We're also reducing expenditure. And you might say, well, how is that different from minimising the investment? Well, I think here, really, what we're looking at is we're looking at the ongoing costs. So, if we take the on-premise example again, where we talk about the infrastructure, the hardware infrastructure that's involved, in that environment, although Business One is a simple application to administer, to use, there is still an overhead for somebody in the organisation. And if you have IT staff that are using or that are looking after these applications, looking after the hardware, there's a cost involved with that. Now, if we take an on-demand solution, we don't need to pay for those employees in that way anymore. And what that can allow us to do is actually free up those resources to concentrate on aspects that will really help grow that customer's business. And then the final thing, and I'm just going to write this down short rather than trying to put this all in, but the final aspect is life cycle management. I think this is something that's very attractive. We've all been through the sales process with customers before, where they're not only asking about the functionality of our application, but they're also asking how easy or difficult it is to actually upgrade that, and how often do they have to go through that patch cycle, that upgrade cycle. And I think with cloud, that customers expect that the lifecycle management just happens. Maybe they get notification about when the system might be down for a period of time, but fundamentally, they don't need to concern themselves with how that actually happens. And I think that is a really key point. So I think, just recapping on some of those, these are the sort of issues and the sort of reasons that customers are looking to cloud solutions, and why we have an opportunity with SAP Business One Ondemand to address a number of these different areas. So I think that really sort of sums up the why are customers looking, and there'll be lots of other reasons. And if you search the internet, you'll find so many white papers out there that really analyse, what is this trend that's happening? Why is the trend occurring? Why are some people looking at cloud solutions today that perhaps weren't yesterday?
All right, so I'm going to now talk about the what component. What are we actually selling our customers when we're selling them SAP Business One Ondemand? So first and foremost, I think one of the key messages is the sales process doesn't actually change in terms of the business application that you're selling them. First and foremost, whether it's deployed on-premise, whether it's on-demand, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's on the table, whether it's in the doorway, whatever the case may be, you are still selling them a business application, and that business application has to meet their requirements. So that doesn't change. That whole process of determining the right fit, determining whether or not there are complementary solutions that you need to offer with the solution, none of that really changes. But there's a couple of other components that you now have to bring into the picture. You have to bring into the picture this idea of if you like, the hosting solutions. The components that are being delivered by the hosting partner that you are working with as an SAP Business One On-Demand customer. Then, of course, you have your implementation services. Now, Joel touched on this in the introduction. This is one of those key areas, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in the deployment area. But one of the key things that we're hearing from customers is that they're now starting to say, all right, you're providing the software to me in an on-demand model. You're providing to me software as a service, where I pay per user per month to access the software. And the amount of time you're asking me to commit is 1 year. And yet, Mr. Partner, you're now saying to me, well, it's going to cost me still the 25, 30,000, whatever the traditional implementation costs were of deploying an on-premise solution. Now, that's going to probably float for a little while, okay? But one of the things that I think you're going to find over time is that customers are going to start saying, all right, well, why do I pay per user per month for the software and not per user per month for the implementation services and the support services and so on? So you need to start factoring that in as well. So bring all of these components together. That's the what you're selling. But it's not just about the solution. I think you go back to the points that Joel made before about why are customers going to buy an on-demand solution. You go back to those things like access. You go back to those things like minimizing their investment. To a certain extent, when you're selling an on-demand solution, the what you're selling really relates back to those points. You're selling ease of access to the solution. You're selling, the whole concept behind on-demand. And this is a new sales pitch that you really do need to be able to articulate effectively to your customers. So hopefully that makes sense, this whole idea of what. And the challenge, certainly for us, as we work together as partners with you as an SAP Business One On-Demand partner and us at SAP, is to really refine that whole idea, refine that whole model that we have of offering this solution to customers and explaining to them specifically what it is that they're buying from you. So hopefully that makes sense. Now I'm going to just roll on a little bit with Joel's permission and just start talking about our next point, which is really around the how. And this comes down to the subject of deployment. Now, this rolls on from that last point that I made, which is really around the idea that customers are now saying, okay, this is an on-demand solution, it's software as a service. How do I now consume this? How are you going to package it up as a partner to make it easy for the customer to understand? What are the components that are involved? Yes, there's the SAP Business One software. Yes, there's the cost of having it hosted. Yes, there's the cost of the ongoing upgrades. Yes, there's the cost of the implementation. How are you going to package all of that up? Now, Joel's going to talk about this in a second, but I want to frame the discussion for you. And it's important that, you don't feel like, here we are, SAP, lecturing you, a partner, about how to run your business, because that's not what this is about. But I spend a lot of time talking with analysts and bloggers and influencers and customers and other partners as well. And one of the key messages is the market is changing. The way that people are expecting to have their implementation services is also changing as well. Customers are now asking the question, as I said before, why do I have to pay a big chunk of services and yet I can pay for my software per user per month? So the challenge for us to work on together is, how do we address this problem? And I'm going to pass back to Joel, and he's going to talk a little bit about how you might want to do that. So, Joel, over to you.
So, carrying on from where Richard left off, where he's talked about what some of the challenges are that we have, as a community with deploying a cloud solution now, with the expectation change that's happened in the market in terms of what people want and what people expect. What we wanted to do was really share some thoughts with you. And these are thoughts. These are here to sort of provoke a discussion. These aren't the gospel according to SAP. These aren't what Richard and I are telling you that you should do. But really these are areas that we think have the opportunity to potentially be different in the on-demand model. So, I mean, one of the key things that I've seen so far, and I know Richard has, we've been talking about it today, is this idea of templates. And this isn't new to SAP Business One. Let's face it, we have the starter package, which has been available for SAP Business One, which gives us that ability to take something that's highly pre-configured and put it into a package that's going to allow a customer to consume that and start gaining benefit very quickly. Now, we can actually take that and we can add another piece to that puzzle, because when it comes to the on-demand solution, obviously, as we've said before, they're not having to concern themselves with the infrastructure, but they're also not having to concern themselves with the lifecycle management. So we can actually add two more benefits into that. And certainly, if we look at the way that the partners that we have currently deploying on demand are working, is they've gone down this route saying, I want something that will allow my customer to basically fill out a questionnaire. And when they fill out that questionnaire is answering all of their questions to do with the implementation. And then the partner can go away very, very quickly, tailor their package to suit that customer, deploy it, train them, and ensure that, one, that customer's getting value very quickly, but two, they're also making money from their software as a service as quickly as possible. So we've looked at that sort of generic idea of templates, and actually, we can then start feeding that into the idea of, okay, how do we go about pricing the components in an on-demand solution? And so if we take that idea and if we take the package solution that we have, first of all, we can make something quite generic like the starter package. Maybe choose a size of customer of 5 to 10 users where we think we can go and deploy this and get some good return. So that's one way of doing it. I think the other thing that we can do, though, is that we can look to have an industry focus. And again, we have examples of partners who are really doing this and doing it extremely well today. If we take Orchestra over in the US, they have a solution for microbreweries, and this is proving to be extremely successful in that market, but also extremely successful as an on-demand deployment method as well. So, I think there is some real opportunity there for us to again say, companies, when they look to cloud, want this application, want the benefits from their solution very, very quickly. And one way of doing that is by using a packaged solution. So again, this all comes back to all of these things that we talk about with Business One, of really knowing your market, and understanding that domain and being able to sell and implement to those sort of customers. So that's one thing. I think the other areas that we do need to consider as well are in the whole life cycle management, and I think this theme has come up several times today already. And I think one aspect that perhaps is something that we should spend some time talking about is that of upgrades. Because imagine if you were buying a software as a service solution, and you'd got the contract in front of you to sign, and you looked at all of the different components that were on that contract, and you ticked off the per user per month, that's fine, the add-on, that's per user per month, that's also fine. Implementation, well, we've already discussed some of the ways that can be packaged up, and then you get to the fact that in fact there's going to be an additional upgrade charge. When its time comes round for an upgrade to happen, and I don't think that customers are expecting that. Certainly the ones that we've spoken to don't expect lifecycle management to work in that way with a cloud solution. So then we need to start considering things like, okay, so how many am I going to do a year? And as a partner, how many upgrades am I going to offer to my customers a year? And this is something, again, each partner we've talked to has got a slightly different way of approaching this. Some are looking at maybe 3 a year, which might be patches, might include a major upgrade. So others are looking at 4 or maybe 5. And again, I think this needs to be something that needs some careful consideration. And if we frame that, we could look at that in the sense of Business One and our release cycle as well. So Business One's release family, just as a recap, lasts 3 years. A major release lasts 3 years as a family, and within that time there will be a couple of minor releases on a yearly basis, and then we'll have patches in between. So again, you need to kind of consider all of that in line with which add-ons are you running in your environment as well, and there's some consideration there in terms of how you might want to deploy that and how you might want those to work as well. And then coming up with an overall plan that you're going to use for the majority of your customers that exist within your landscape. One of the other aspects that we do need to consider as well is that some of the cloud providers that we've worked with this year and we've signed up are offering this upgrade piece as a service to you as a partner as well. And in fact, they'll take care of that aspect for you. So this is definitely one of those areas that, in terms of pricing, in terms of the way that you're going to work with your hosting provider, is something that you really do need to ensure that you get to the bottom of and understand completely. And most importantly, and I'd say this is really the key thing here, is let's make sure it's easy for the customer to understand. The customer doesn't want to see all of this. This messy chart that I have here, full of this information, where we're just trying to talk about some of the aspects, some of the components that really make up the on-demand solution. The customer doesn't want to see that. What the customer wants to see is that they are buying a solution that has a per-user price per month, and that they can use it and consume it, and that's it. So I think that's the key thing. We must always remember that when we're packaging this up. It's okay for us here today to be discussing all of the different aspects. But we need to make sure that it comes across as very clear and very concise to our customers. And then, the final sort of point on this chart in terms of consideration is support. And again, this is there as a sort of thought process. What is it that we want to do with support? Do we want to offer support in the same way that we do today? Are you going to take the per user cost per month and add a percentage on for support? Or are you going to perhaps look at doing it in a different way and saying, well, it's software as a service. I'm going to do support almost as demand. What I'll do is I'll offer a bundle of hours of time, however you wish to quantify that, and allow a user or a customer to call that off as and when they need it. Is that the way that you're going to do it? Are you going to offering different tiers? And again, this isn't a case of we believe you should do it like this. This is really just one of those aspects that here is something else that we potentially could tweak as part of this model, and a lot of it is going to be down to what does the customer really want? Okay, so with all of this, as I said, we need to think about all of these different aspects. Perhaps these are things that we could have just considered Ondemand as a new deployment model. It's just we sell Business One and we just happen to be deploying it in the cloud. But actually, I think when you start digging into it, when you start looking at the opportunity, then what we see is that here's an opportunity for us to do something quite different, to start changing the way that we do some of these activities. And the key thing in all of this, I said it already, I'll say it again, is let's just make sure that it's easy for the customer to understand, and that it's easy for the customer to consume that as well. And go.
All right, so let's just quickly recap what Joel and I have covered with you. So where did we start? We talked about who. Who is going to buy SAP Business One on demand? What should your target market be? What are the characteristics of these kinds of customers? We talked about why. Why are they going to buy? What are the key things that are going to motivate them to buy an on-demand solution rather than an on-premise solution? We then talked about what is it that we're going to provide to them as part of our package. And then, importantly, and the most difficult aspect of this whole discussion is we had the conversation about how. And of course, what Joel took you through is potentially, what looks like a fairly complex series of pieces, but it is. One of the challenges, oftentimes, one of the things that you don't want SAP to do as a partner is tell you how to run your business, right? But then sometimes we also get the feedback, well, SAP, can you give us some guidelines? The whole purpose of this session is really to give you a framework for starting to think about what it is that you want to do. What's the next step? The next step is that you need to have a conversation with one of our team. Now, you can reach out to Joel Harris. You can reach out to myself, Richard Duffy. You can talk to your channel manager. You can talk to your local product expert. And if they can't help you specifically around this, they can certainly organise for you to have a conversation with Joel or I. And we would be more than happy to talk with you specifically about how this can work for you. So that's the call to action. Take what we've talked about today, give it some thought. It's very, very clear it's not just a case of signing up to start selling Business One on demand and then running out and going to market and start trying to find some customers. That's going to be the next thing which we're going to need to talk about, which is the marketing aspect. But you really need to have given all of these things some thought first, because the answers to these questions are actually then going to lead on to then say, well, how am I now going to go out and find those customers? How am I now going to attract them? How am I going to talk to them? What am I going to do from a marketing perspective to lead them through a buying cycle? So hopefully this has been helpful for you. Again, my email address is richard.duffy@sap.com and Joel's email address is joel.harris@sap.com, and of course you can find both of us via social media. We'd be more than happy to have that discussion with you and see what we can do to help you become successful selling and implementing SAP Business One on demand. Thanks.